Hello, it's Claire here, just bringing you a little bit of information about how the quads work in all of 3D Coaching's training. And you might want to return to this over time so that you can just remember what to do in the practice. The purpose of the practice is for the coach to really refine what we're learning in the room. And in order to do that, we need somebody to think. So the first role is the thinker, and the thinker's job is to do some good thinking. So make sure, thinkers, that you bring something that's real and yours and where you haven't got a fully formed solution. And it's really worth every so often making a little list of things that you can bring to think about, because we don't want to waste time in the small groups by going, well, I don't know if I've got something to think about. So your trainer will always make sure that you know when there's a practice session coming up where you'll need to bring something. Some people do a lot of coaching of themselves, and you need to think about what you're going to bring like the night before or an hour before we meet. Others of you need to sit down and think, make a list. And it might be a talk I need to prepare. It might be, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? It could be all sorts of things. So the role of the thinker is to think. Then you've got the coach. And the role of the coach is to do the thing that we're just trying to practice and to focus on. So make sure you've got your Stoker's card or your Stoker's notes and any kit that we've talked about. You need to keep your own time when you're the coach, and that means that you need a watch or a clock. If you're using a smartphone, then you need the Clocks app, because that won't screen save itself and you will be able to see it all of the time. In order to work and learn some of the things that we're learning, you've got to know what the time is all the time. So please don't use a countdown timer, and please don't ask anybody else to keep time for you. You need to keep time yourself. So your role in this place is to facilitate the thinker's thinking using those Stoker's questions. And when you don't know what to do, check in. Use the questions on the back of your Stoker's cards or in the handouts. Things like, so where are we? What do we need to do next? It's okay to not know what you're doing. When you get much more experience, you will be really confident to not know what you're doing. Right now, you think you need to know, but you don't. And that's a bit of learning. So if you're in the room, make sure that you and the thinker are next to each other, and that the observer and the noticer are a bit out of the way. If you're online, observers and noticers switch off your video and audio. And coaches and thinkers, what you need to do is to click the right hand top of the square of somebody who's got their video off and put hide non-video participants, and then you'll only be able to see the thinker. And coaches, hide self-view, and then you can't see yourself and get self-conscious either, which is a very good thing. So the third role is we have an observer. And the role of the observer is to observe the process between the coach and the thinker. So observe the use of the Stoker's questions or whatever is your learning edge today. Observe what's going on, observe the quality of the questions, and make some notes on the process. So what's happening between these two people? If you are in a 3 and not a 4, you won't have somebody in this role. You'll just have a noticer. So in a 3, you have no observer. In a 4, you have an observer and a noticer. So the role of the noticer is to do some really good learning about 3 things. And they're 3 things that will make you an absolutely cracking coach when you integrate them in the coaching chair. But to start with, you need to focus on learning them when you aren't worried about asking the questions. So you're looking at 3 things here. Number 1 is the thinker thinking, and how do I know that? So what do I notice that makes me know that the thinker is thinking or not thinking? You are not analysing them, and this is not a course in psychoanalysis at all. So this is about your learning about the process. Number one is the thinker thinking. Number two, what do I see or hear or sense that could generate some great questions if I was in the coaching chair? No? And the third one is, are the questions or observations coming too fast, too slow, or about the right pace? So it's something about timing. So 3 things to focus on in the noticing chair. Number 1, is the thinker thinking or not? How do I know? Number 2, what do I see or hear or sense that will give me some insight when I need to be asking questions? And number 3, something about timing. So you do your good work. Your trainer will tell you how long that's for. So let's say it's for 12 minutes. And then it's time to do feedback. The feedback is exclusively from these 3 on the coach and how they did what they did. It is really important not to do any feedback about the stuff that the thinker brought, because we need them to be safe. So the first feedback, the coach on themselves, and you may want to write this down. We encourage you to write it down. The feedback you get from everybody, because that will be part of your learning edge when you do your next practice. So number 1, one thing I did well, one thing I could develop as a coach. Second feedback is the thinker feeds back on the coach. One thing you did well in the coaching and one thing you could develop. Notice the good always comes first. If you have an observer, one thing the coach did well, one thing they could develop. Please, not everything. One thing they did well, one thing they could develop. And then finally, the noticer does some good observation about what did they notice. So what did they learn about noticing, not what did they notice in the thinker. So please, no feedback like you got very anxious when they asked you about X, because that's about them and their stuff. So this might be, I noticed that they looked away when they were thinking, and when they weren't thinking, they were much more fluent. It may be that you say, I noticed some headlines and some underbelly, and that was useful, but you don't need to say what they were. Or you might say something that you learned about timing. But this is not about analysing. This is about, what am I learning here that I can put into practice when I am there? So that's how the quads work. And in your workbooks, you will have an order of who goes next, partly because it speeds up the process. And secondly is the thinker does not want to coach next, because they might still be thinking. Because remember, we know that the best learning happens after the conversation is over. So they need to become the observer. And then you have another go. So in every practice session, everybody gets a go in every role. So make sure you really stick to time, both in the coaching work and in the feedback, so that everybody gets a fair share. And really try not to get over focused on one round. If there's important learning or questions about something, then note it or invite the trainer to come and join you, and they can help you to do some work on that. But everybody needs to have a fair size of time for their practice sessions. Bookmark this video. We recommend, because you might very well want to come back and have another look to remind you of how these quads work. Enjoy the practice.